Good morning, my lovelies. I hope you are well and enjoying your weekend so far, and whatever is left of it when you watch this video. So thank you so much for joining me. If you are new here, my name is Sharon. I am 62 years old, although not for much longer. And I started this YouTube channel back in January of this year, after I'd had a change of circumstances 2 years previous to that. So in January 23, I moved into this rented property. I left the family home, purely my choice. And of course, I've got a completely new way of life, living, and finances are completely different for me now. To how they used to be. So it's just me documenting my journey, and over here we talk about budgeting, personal finance, food shopping. I love a yellow sticker, and you'll also see some recipes thrown in along the way. So if it sounds like something you may be interested in, I would love it if you would subscribe, as it would really help the channel to grow. So let's get into it. I've got no notes. I have got no specific figures pertaining to what I'm going to talk about today. But I feel that it is kind of a story that needs to be told if it makes somebody get some paperwork out and check something, just to make sure they know their position, because my husband is not a silly man, and I don't class myself as a silly woman, but there is a situation that means that the house that I used to live in has still got a mortgage on it. And I would think that a lot of people that watch my channel probably think of my age and might well assume that there is no mortgage on my previous property. So I just kind of wanted to explain why there is, because I know myself, a lot of the channels that I watch and love, a lot of ladies of a similar age or younger than me don't have mortgages. They've been able to buy properties outright. And of course, if I was in that position, you know, my life would be a lot easier than it currently is, but I'm not in that position. Of course, I'm renting, I have to pay rent, but the situation surrounding the house that I left means that there is not enough equity in the property that if it was sold, that both myself and my husband would have enough money to purchase something for ourselves outright. So I wanted to explain a little bit of how, an awful circumstance that occurred to us has affected all of this, and the fact that there is still a mortgage on that property. So the house was bought in February of 2004. It was originally a Northern Rock mortgage, and I'm not going to go into all of the Northern Rock stuff because it was very well documented in the press at the time and is still an ongoing issue with the courts. I don't know if there'll ever be an outcome to it, whether it will be in my lifetime or whether it will just all be brushed under the carpet at the end of the day. I'm not sure. But basically what happened, the mortgage when the house was bought was an interest-only mortgage taken out with an insurance policy, which we, the royal we, assumed, we shouldn't say assumed, that's not the right word, were led to believe that that insurance policy would pay off the mortgage at the end of the term. So what happened, we'd got this mortgage through a local guy. He's not local to that area anymore. He was a dad of some of the children at the school that my girls, and then my son subsequently went on to attend. And we used him for our mortgage and for our insurance policy that ran alongside it. Then many, many years later, and I'm literally only talking probably 2-3 years before I actually moved out, what happened one day, we had a letter from, I think it was Royal London, the ones they've got a purple banner, I'm sure it's Royal London. We had a letter from them saying that they had taken over the insurance company that our policy was with. And so my husband said, well, that's good, because we haven't been able to find that paperwork for years. So, you know, we'll contact them and ask if we can have all the paperwork pertaining to our insurance policy, which we did. And what transpired was the policy that we had been paying £65 a month for coming up 20 years, it was probably about 18 years at the time, was, I think the word is, a depreciating policy, which meant that every year the amount that you would get was decreasing. And so basically you would end up in a position where we thought that that insurance policy would pay off of our mortgage at the end of the mortgage term. And that wasn't the case. The money, so the policy had started at the value the property was bought at, and had then gone down and down and down and down and down every single year. So there was virtually nothing to pay the mortgage off. So obviously we were upset, we were angry, we were beating ourselves up for not having looked into this a little bit more closely, but also there was part of us that were grateful that Royal London had indeed taken over this particular insurance company, because it at least meant we could take some action and do something about it. Had we not have known until that mortgage term had come to the end, we would have been in a complete blind panic. And yeah, God knows what would have happened. So yeah, basically, so we did our research because we knew that the broker had moved out of area some years beforehand, but sort of got the private detective cap on and did everything that I could to get as much information about, because we couldn't even remember his company name at the time or anything like that. So I did quite a bit of detective work. I remembered that somebody who I knew's sister was once a secretary for him, because at one point, and this was after we'd got our mortgage and our insurance policy out through him as our broker, he'd opened up a premises in the local town, and she was his secretary for a while, because I'd seen her working in there when I had walked past when I was in town. So luckily I was Facebook friends with her. So I got in touch with her and said, can you remember, because obviously it's going back quite some time, what was the name of the company that so-and-so owned, that you worked for? So I got as much information from as many different avenues as I could. And then, armed with all of the information that we had, we contacted the financial ombudsman. That is a complete other story in itself, but the upshot was we did not get anywhere with it. It wasn't something that they could pursue. The chap had various different company names over the years that were now no longer in existence, was the upshot of it. And there was nothing they could do. So we then had to remortgage. And the mortgage that we then got was with Santander, not that that matters to you guys, of course. and was a part interest, part repayment mortgage. So there is still a mortgage on that property. When we remortgaged, we took out some extra money to get the kitchen done, which was in desperate need of doing because we'd lived there for quite a long time. And I think the original kitchen was in the house. I think the house was built in 1999. We bought it in 2004. So yeah, there were some updates that were desperately needed. So we borrowed a little bit of extra money to update the kitchen, knock a wall down and just kind of change the living space slightly to fit our requirements a little bit more at the time. So that is the upshot, basically, of why I do not own a property outright, why I can't get money out of that property. I could, but basically I don't class myself as a horrible person, because if I forced the sale of that property, like I said, there's not enough in it. I think our mortgage on it is 290, and the value, because I'm on Rightmove all the time, I keep abreast of prices for houses in the area that I used to live in and also in the area that I now live in when it comes to rentals, for example. So I keep an eye on house prices and rental prices constantly, every couple of days. So I know roughly what the house is worth, and at my estimation, it's probably about 475. And with a £290,000 mortgage on it, as you can see, if it was sold, the only thing we'd probably be able to buy each would be a mobile home, to be perfectly honest. And I'm just not somebody who wants to live in a caravan. I don't. Simple as that. Lots of people do. And of course, if we were still together, we would be in a position now where we could downsize and buy something small or a flat outright and not have a mortgage. And that was always kind of like the master plan, really, that when my son moved out, we would reassess our situation in regard to not needing the extra bedrooms and that kind of thing anymore. But of course, I moved out before my son, and my son moved out just before Christmas last year, bought a house with his girlfriend. So yes, my husband still lives in the property that I have still got my name on, paying the mortgage solely on his own, and I am solely paying the rent on this property where I am at now. So I kind of wanted to, it's been niggling me for a long time, and I felt as if I should just address it, because I've had so many comments saying, you know, you sound like you've left with virtually nothing, which of course is true. And I appreciate everybody's concern when it comes to things like that. But when it comes to the property, I just kind of like wanted to explain to you why I am in a position where I don't own something outright. So my outgoings are, well, I think they're very high in comparison to what I earn, even though my rent is slightly cheaper because it is a house rented through somebody that I know. This house is owned by my friend's dad, but of course we don't know how long those circumstances will remain as they are. And you know that I've mentioned many times in the past that my big concern is about the rent going up, because you know, I've had a small pay rise. In the 3 years that I've lived here, I've had one pay rise, which was earlier this year, and that made a difference to my income of £40 per month. So, yeah, nobody's wages are going up in relation to how rents are going up, or the cost of living in general is going up. So I don't know how anybody is expected to cope. But of course, people of my age, a lot of people of my age will of course have paid their mortgages off and won't have what is, you know, the biggest expense that we have to make, which is our mortgage or our paying our rent. And I have said so many times that I worry about the future, and luckily I know it's only small, starting small, saving my YouTube income just in case, you know, anything happens and I have to move out of this property. I'm trying to get to a figure that I feel is a feasible amount that I may well need for a month's deposit and a month's rent in advance, plus any kind of like removal, or there could be estate agency fees involved. You just don't know. And it's going to take me quite some time to get to that figure, of course. With, as you guys know, I do a small monthly donation of any YouTube income of 15%. And I wanted to use my YouTube income for saving money, because I do feel, and especially what we're seeing around YouTube now, money's going down for people. During the summer months, people seem to be getting a lot less. I've certainly got a lot less than the first month that I got income for. So it's something that I don't want to rely on. So it seemed as if it made perfect sense to me in my circumstances to use anything extra I was getting from, I guess you could say, YouTube is a side hustle, to start saving anything that I had once I'd put away the tax, made a charitable donation to give back, and then to put the rest, whatever was left, into savings. And that is how I've been doing it. So it's not taken me as long to talk about this subject as I thought it would. I thought it'd be really rambly. I've got no notes. It probably is really rambly, but I just, yeah, I felt that I needed to address the situation, and just to let you guys know that I'm not in a position where I could be living in a property that didn't have housing costs associated with it. I'm not a horrible person. I'm not going to force the sale of that property that my husband still lives in, purely because there is not enough money in it for us both to buy something outright. And just to give you the heads up, you're looking at, in the area I live now, there are retirement flats. There's nothing like that in the area I used to live. Where I live now, there are retirement flats, and they go for, a 1-bedroom retirement flat goes for about 120, 130. There's none of those where I used to live. Where I used to live, you're looking at, for a 2-bedroom flat, you're looking at around 160 cheapest for a 2-bedroomed flat. So yeah, there's definitely not enough for either of us to buy somewhere. A 1-bedroom would be less, of course, but you don't get a lot of 1-bedroom flats coming up where I used to live, unless they form part of a terraced house or something like that. But I've rarely seen anything like that come up in the almost 3 years that I've lived here. But I do keep abreast of the situation. But yeah, so that is what happened, basically. That is why there's still a mortgage on that property. I feel we were done dirty on the insurance policy. But it is an absolute lesson, as I say, because we're not stupid people, how we did not realise that the value of that policy was going down and down every single year, and that at the end of the term there would be no money to pay that mortgage off, and we would have to, yeah, we ended up having to remortgage and getting another insurance policy. So that's the situation there. So I'm not going to go on anymore. We are almost at 20 minutes. I feel that's enough. But I hope that's explained a few things that I'm sure a lot of you are wondering and maybe don't want to ask. But yeah, so I'll see you on Wednesday. with some kind of foodie video, some shopping, and yeah, I think there is a bit of cooking. I think I have made something to share with you on Wednesday, so I look forward to seeing you then. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. It costs you nothing. It just means that if you switch on the bell icon, you will be notified of any future videos that I push live, and it's great to have you along. Thank you guys all so much for your support that I receive on every video. It's always lovely to read your comments, and every single one of them is appreciated. So take good care, have a great week, and I will see you soon, guys. Bye bye.